Coming up, the pandemic has hit the Indiana tourism industry especially hard. But as attractions reopen in stages, tourism leaders are hopeful visitors will return. We'll talk with leadership from Indiana Dunes Tourism and also Southern Indiana Tourism about the economic impact and their plans for the summer.
Navigating the COVID-19 pandemic has been a roller coaster ride for everyone. But come June 17th, a roller coaster will literally be hitting the tracks at record speed. It's in Santa Claus, Indiana. I'll have more from Holiday World SPLASHIN Safari coming up.
And several Hoosier distilleries continue to make their mark around the state. From almond bite crafted for the vegan and gluten-free communities to bourbon cocktails and cans from West Fork whiskey. We'll toast to distilleries expanding their reach in this month's Trendiana. Details on those stories and much more ahead on this edition of Inside Indiana Business. Hello and welcome to Inside Indiana Business. I'm Gary Dick. Well, Indiana welcomed a record nearly 81 million visitors to the state in 2018. It was a year that saw Indiana tourism set a record $13 billion in visitor spending as well. But what is next for an industry that has been dealt a severe economic blow by the coronavirus pandemic? Well, Indiana tourism is just beginning the road back as Governor Holcomb's phased reopening plan for the state continues to unfold with a goal of normal operations by July 4. With more on the pandemic's impact statewide and efforts to restart a sector that is so very important to the Indiana economy, pleased to be joined by Indiana Dunes Tourism Executive Director Lorelei Weimer and Southern Indiana Tourism Assistant Director Luann Matson. And ladies, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's start in Northwest Indiana. Lorelei, the Dunes getting a lot of attention for that national park designation. This is the first kind of full year of that designation. It had a big impact last year after the announcement. I know a lot of anticipation heading into this year than the pandemic. What's the impact, Ben?
Well, you know, we have 6 million visitors that come to our destination annually, but the Indiana Dunes brings in 3.6 million just themselves. And because of the name change, and it was just one word from Lakeshore to National Park, we increased by 21% last year. So it was a significant change in terms of going to that distinction of being a national park.
Yeah, in terms of the impact, the pandemic obviously has ground travel in many ways to a halt. How substantial has it been there?
Well, the biggest measurement that we have is our hotel occupancy. And in April, which is the month that got hit really hard, we had a 26% occupancy. Mm-hmm. We hope to see that gradually improve. We had a great Memorial Day weekend. We've had other states that are still closed around us. So a lot of visitors are coming to the dunes. And I do think some of those are going to start translating into hotel guests, but it's not going to be anything like it was last year. But a lot of national parks are seeing increased visitation because outdoors is considered being as safe in terms of being able to do an activity that's considered for the low risk.
Yeah, good. We'll be back to talk to you in a moment about some of those proactive things you're doing. Let's go to Southeast Indiana now. Luann Matson, Clark and Floyd County is your focus area there, but really the region, the Louisville region as well. What's the impact been in Southeast Indiana?
Well, we have we have more than $300 million in economic impact in our visitor spending. So people staying in our hotels, visiting our restaurants, and going to our attractions. And just like Lorelei said, our hotel occupancy has been down, and we've been averaging about 30% hotel occupancies across the board. And that's because we're at this juncture, but because we've had hotels that have construction contracts and truck drivers we're in this confluence where we have I-65, I-64, and I-71 that meet. So there are a lot of people, essential workers, that are staying in our hotels that are helping that occupancy. But 30% during the time when we're supposed to be having Thunder over Louisville and the Kentucky Derby and Abbey Road on the River on Memorial Day weekend is a far cry from where it has been.
There's been a lot of economic development momentum in that part of the state. And also, as you look at tourism, and I look at events or look at venues like the Ohio River Greenway, the Big Four pedestrian and cycling bridge, Falls of the Ohio, that state park, you have a lot of attractions down there. As you look going forward, what's the plan for reopening and welcoming visitors or guests back to those venues?
Well, we're doing that slowly. We're taking the governor's recommendations and stages to heart. We want to make sure that we're doing that safely so that our residents feel good about visitors coming into the community and that visitors feel good. So we're doing a safety first message, making sure everybody has those plans in place. To keep the social distancing and the hand hygiene and all those things front and center so that we can welcome people and so that they can enjoy themselves, relax and rejuvenate like vacation is supposed to have you do, and then have a great time.
Very good. Lorelei, I know you're out with a new publication. You want to really connect with visitors. Talk about plans there in Northwest Indiana, in particular at the Dunes, to welcome people back in. I know you expect, it's not going to happen overnight, but you expect hopefully a big year.
Absolutely. So our parks have remained open, and they're now opening up restrooms and so forth. We did release a public service announcement with the National Park and the State Park and our agency to get that out on social media, into the media, just to make sure that, like Luann, when visitors come, we want to make sure that they're doing all the proper social distancing, if they can wear a mask, to do so, and just being mindful of the fact that some of our businesses will have different rules of, capacity. They may request that you wear a mask, and to really respect that, because we want to keep the visitors as well as the employees and our residents safe. But one of the things that we just launched, which we're excited about, is our new outdoor adventure guide. And we are really known for our outdoor adventure, which is fishing, which is actually world-class fishing, biking, paddling, hiking, and bird watching. And it's a year-round destination. So we would encourage people to go to indianadunes.com to get that guide. It's a very detailed guide. And so I think we have something for everyone. And again, outdoor recreation is low risk. And so we think that's a great way to enjoy our destination.
Huge impact on the Indiana economy and certainly tourism, a $13+ billion industry. Lorelei Weimer from Indiana Dunes in Northwest Indiana, Luann Matson from Southern Indiana Tourism in Southeast Indiana. Thank you both for joining us. Good luck the rest of the year.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, the pandemic has sent the hugely popular Holiday World and SPLASHIN Safari in Southwest Indiana on a topsy-turvy ride.
We recognize that a lot of our guests are still kind of questioning, is it going to be safe enough for me to attend? And, I can tell you that yes, it will, because of the procedures that we're going to be putting in place.
Around Indiana reporter Mary Rachel Redmond takes us to Santa Claus to show us how the theme park is getting back on track. And there's a high-tech virtual component. Here's what's making news now around Indiana. Well, expansion in the orthopedics capital of the world. Warsaw-based NEXTREMITY Solutions relocating to a new building in the Warsaw Technology Park with plans to create a new headquarters there and more than 100 new jobs, tripling its workforce by 2024. NEXTREMITY is a privately held orthopedics commercialization company taking ideas in the extremity musculoskeletal space from concept to market, partnering with surgeons and industry partners, including Zimmer Biomet. CEO Rod Meyer tells me innovation has the potential to fuel more investment and jobs in Kosciuszko County.
We believe that it is innovation that will fuel our growth. The more products that we design, more products have to be manufactured. As that product is well accepted around the world, manufacturing capacities have to increase. So truly, innovation is what will drive the future opportunities, not only for our community, but for our county and for the orthopedic industry as a whole. Innovation is what drives growth.
NEXTREMITY recently acquired medical device contract manufacturer Lakeland Technology, and the combined company will be housed in that new Warsaw Tech Park location. Kosciuszko Economic Development Corporation CEO Alan Teo says the deal represents the future of the orthopedic industry in Warsaw. Meantime, Canada-based Point BioPharma has selected Indianapolis for the company's first U.S. manufacturing facility. Point this week announcing plans to invest more than $25 million to purchase and renovate a facility and create more than 100 jobs by the end of 2024. In our second half hour, CEO Dr. Joe McCann explains why location was so critical in choosing Indy over other locations in Canada and the U.S., including Charlotte and St. Louis. Well, especially in Santa Claus, where Holiday World became the first theme park in the U.S. to publicly announce its opening dates amid the corona pandemic, the family-owned theme park will swing open its gates to the general public June 17. But many question, is it safe? Around Indiana reporter Mary Rachel Redmond made the trip down to Santa Claus to get some answers.
It's the oldest theme park in the United States.
Welcome to Santa Claus Land.
Opened in 1946 as Santa Claus Land.
After a surprise opening,
Then renamed Holiday World in 1984, this once tiny southern Indiana treasure now attracts more than 1 million visitors a year, grossing nearly $200 million. As it enters its 74th year of operation, however, it won't quite be business as usual.
We're in a different world right now, and we've been following this pandemic from day one. We are going to make sure that we try to help maintain social distancing from the time they park until the time that they come through the front gates. The guests need to recognize that just like everywhere else, things are going to be a little different right now.
Some of the more notable changes that will take place this summer include limiting attendance to 50% capacity.
To help manage the crowds and manage the number of people that are in here, we're only going to have the dry park open. So the water park right now will not be open, but we are targeting opening SPLASHIN Safari on July the 4th.
Another big adjustment for park goers will be admission. Tickets now have to be purchased ahead of time online.
Tickets will not be sold at the gate, so they will have to be bought in advance.
They've also developed major sanitation protocol for employees.
We've enhanced all of our sanitation procedures. Every single department in the park has defined intervals for cleaning and sanitizing high-touch areas such as handrails, ride restraint systems, seating areas, hand sanitizer. We'll have over 90 of those throughout the park, located near restrooms, food and beverage facilities, attractions.
One of the biggest changes to Holiday World this summer is the inline reservation system that not only makes social distancing easier, but the real perk, you only have to wait 15 minutes for your favorite ride.
We're installing a new virtual queuing system to allow people to wait for rides virtually instead of being in a physical confined queuing area.
So you can go on your smartphone. We're going to provide you with a link that'll be on our website, up our page, and you can basically reserve your place in line. You will get a notification then on your phone about 15 minutes beforehand to go to that attraction. If you don't have a smartphone, no problem. We're going to give everybody a wristband so we can utilize the wristband procedures as well. It's
definitely been a challenge. There's been a challenge every single day, but we're kind of approaching it from the standpoint that there's things we can do here to improve the business in the long haul. We think things like virtual queuing, it's an opportunity to get, for us to evolve as a business. I think people are going to see the theme park experience not just change, but it's going to improve for the better.
Mary Rachel Redmond, Inside Indiana Business.
Up next, a milestone for a global ag company with a huge footprint in Indiana. It's been 1 year since Corteva Agriscience spun off from Dow DuPont to begin operating independently. I'll talk with Corteva Executive VP Rajan Gajaria about the company's evolution and what's next. It's time to go inside innovation, brought to you by Allegion, pioneering safety. Well, 1 year ago, Corteva Agriscience officially began operating independently after spinning off from Dow DuPont. Former Dow Agrisciences, a global ag company that provides diverse solutions aimed at enhancing yield and profitability and also feeding the world. Corteva Executive Vice President of Business Platforms, Rajan Gajaria, joins us now to share more about a strong first quarter. Now, COVID-19 is impacting operations there. Rajan, great to see you as always. Thanks for joining us.
Gary, it's a pleasure. Thank you as always for having us over, and it's a privilege to talk to you. So thank you for having me and Corteva back on the show. Absolutely.
Well, let's talk, 1 year ago, officially, essentially, Corteva came into existence. Give us, I mentioned, spin out what was the former Dow Agrisciences. Give us a very brief thumbnail of Corteva Agriscience.
So, like you said, we are celebrating our first birthday next week, so 1 year into it. And when we were born, it was, like you said, Dow Agrisciences, the DuPont crop protection business, and the Pioneer seed business. All three of them came together, and we are about a $14 billion pure ag play. We've got a global business center right here in Indiana, and we've got a presence in more than 130 countries in the world. So yeah, that's how we were formed and celebrating 1 year. Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, 21,000 employees globally, about 1,600 here in Indianapolis, and really cutting edge innovation and research that takes place right here in Indianapolis. Rajan, talk about the impact of COVID-19, the pandemic. What has it had on the company?
Yeah, well, it's no different really for many of us, but if I start off, I would say the biggest impact when you think about it is with the people. And how our people were safe. We had to first make sure of that. You were right in saying we've got 21,000 people all around the world. It did start with our operations in China. That's when we got the first clue about what might be happening. And that gave us a head start on what some of the impact could be. So we've got employees in Europe. We've got manufacturing sites there. We've got obviously a big presence here in the US, Latin America. So from a first thing which was on our mind was the safety of our people. Yeah. But the second thing that emerged, Gary, was that across the 130 countries that we operate in, we are seen as an essential business. And it was a matter of pride in some ways to work with the farmers all around the world to make sure that the food chain does not get disrupted. We've got a small but important role to play, bringing innovation on the crop protection side, on the seed side. So we ensured our supply chain was resilient. After our people were safe, we worked with our customers to make sure that we could keep the production of agriculture going across the globe. So it's been an interesting journey, and we are proud to have played a small role in food security for the world.
Yeah, we'll only have about 30 seconds, unfortunately. Your CEO a year ago said this is going to be a different kind of agriculture company. As you look going forward, what does that mean, and especially as it relates to Indiana and growing this innovation-based company here in Indiana?
So we are right here. We've got a global business center here. Like you said, more than 1,600 employees based here. It starts with science. Innovation is at the heart of what we do. We've got more than 500 scientists here in the city of Indianapolis. And from here, we bring technologies all around the world. The type of company we are trying to create, like I said, impacting more than 10 million farmers. But we're also trying to make sure that from a sustainability and establishing consumer trust, we bring the best technologies. So right here in Indiana, we've got an R&D setup, a big business setup, and we continue to help grow innovation around the world in our backyard right here.
Rajan Gajaria, Executive VP at Corteva Agriscience. Always great to see you. Thanks for joining us. Happy birthday. Birthday number 1 for Corteva. We'll talk to you soon.
A pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, just ahead, just in time for summer, 5 of the hottest distillery trends in Indiana.
Hoosier businesses across the state are innovating when it comes to the spirits industry. From vegan liqueur to canned bourbon cocktails, we have the full Yelp scoop this weekend on Inside Indiana Business.
That's Yelp's Brittany Smith toasting the state's growing distillery industry next in this month's Trendiana Report. Well, Hoosier distilleries are creating a variety of spirits crafted to wet just about anyone's whistle. In this month's Trendiana segment, we look at 5 spirit trends around the state of Indiana to check out. From a dairy-free vegan cream liqueur to a small batch distillery co-owned by Hamilton County natives that is expanding to dry hopped sparkling water created by a brewery that has 0 alcohol, calories, or sugar, and a lot more. Yelp Midwest Regional Director Brittany Smith has the spirited details. And Brittany, over to you. As always, you've got some great perspective on what folks are doing around the state.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I had such a blast this past week going and visiting West Fork Whiskey to celebrate their new canned bourbon cocktails, and then hopping over to 1205 Distillery to celebrate their expansion into Westfield. So let's take a look.
West Fork Whiskey, we saw all the amazing Kentucky distilleries throughout the years, and we said, why is no one in Indiana making a quality whiskey at an affordable price? May of 2019, we launched our Old Hammer line, which was a resurrection product. Old Hammer was a whiskey that was produced in Lawrence County, Indiana in the mid-1800s, and then we brought it back to life last year. It's a very unique mash bill, 99% corn, 1% malted barley, which is very, very Indiana. It's very sweet, it's approachable. And then we recently launched the bourbon can cocktails, which have been very exciting. We have a signature highball, which is a really traditional whiskey drinkers cocktail. And then we have the snapback, which is a bourbon and ginger, really great summer cocktail. You can find our products anywhere throughout the state, whether it's Meijer, Kroger, Walmart, Big Red, Crown Liquors. And then in terms of our bottle shop here, we're doing carry-out orders currently. You can go online, westforkbottleshop.com, place your order, and then swing by and pick it up.
We're a local distillery. Everything we do is made with 100% Indiana grain. We make spirits that we ship all throughout the state, and we also have cocktails that we sell at our downtown location and our new Westfield location. We're all from the Hamilton County area, and that area is just blowing up so fast and growing. Westfield just seemed like the next smart decision to do, so we hopped on the train real quick and opened up our Westfield spot. Carry out sales through our downtown location or our Westfield location. We're starting cocktail kits that we'll be selling here, pre-mixed cocktails. Also, we're in every Meijer in Indiana, so if you're outside of the central Indiana area, you can pick up our spirits at Meijer as well. We've been making hand sanitizer. We've kind of pivoted that way like most distilleries have been. What we're trying to do is make hand sanitizer and ship it out to people that really need it. We've started doing 5-gallon buckets, and those have been going very quickly.
With the rise of more folks making cocktails at home right now, and alcohol sales also on the rise, this is some good excuses to try out some of these Hoosier businesses.
Yeah, for sure. Some great content and great small business owners as well. You mentioned making cocktails at home. You've got some scoop on several products that may be good news for those home bartenders.
Yeah, if you're familiar with the St. Elmo Cola that you usually get downtown at the St. Elmo Steakhouse, you can actually find their bourbon cocktail mix throughout the state. So it is a vanilla-infused bourbon cocktail, or a bourbon that you can then mix with a little bit of Coke and have that specialty cocktail at home. It is delicious. I'm a personal fan. Another great example of that would be also Almond Bite. If you haven't tried that, it is a vegan cream liqueur that is great if you are vegan or not vegan, and it has half the calories that a lot of the other cream liqueurs on the market have. It's an Indiana product using all local ingredients with a corn whiskey, and it's fun to add into your coffee as well to kick the day off. And then one last one that we have is, Indiana City Brewing. We're looking at more non-alcohol options that businesses are coming up with, even with breweries. And they've got a dry hopped sparkling beer that you can now try. It's a sparkling water, located on the Near East Side downtown. That's another fun option for those who do not drink alcohol.
Brittany, as always, great tour around Indiana and some great products. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much, Gary.
All right. Well, the pandemic has forced youth sports to take a timeout. So what happens when places like Grand Park reopen? We'll have details on research from IUPUI and Grand Park. Stay with us. Well, we aren't far from hearing play ball, at least for youth sports in Indiana. State guidelines now allow practices and games, and tournaments are just about 2 weeks away for Hoosier kids. But game time will look different. Business of Health reporter Kylie Valletta tells us now about a new study that's shedding some light on what changes people really care about most. Kylie.
Thanks, Gary. Grand Park in Westfield, one of the largest youth sports complexes in the country, and the IUPUI Sports Innovation Institute are partnering on a nationwide survey that asked parents, coaches, players, and administrators what changes need to be made at facilities for them to feel safe. Should grandparents be allowed to come in? Should teams sit in dugouts? Would you answer a health screen to enter the park? The results are in from more than 10,000 respondents. Here to tell us more are William Knox, the director of Grand Park, and Dr. David Pierce, director of the IUPUI Sports Innovation Institute. Thank you both for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
William, I'd like to start with you. So this survey focused on 12 modifications that facilities are considering as youth sports start to ramp back up. Can you give us an idea of what people were asked and why their answers are so important?
Yeah, we were very fortunate to work with Dr. Pierce and the Sports Innovation Institute to conduct this research. And what we found as we looked at reopening plans for many facilities and events throughout the country is that there were a lot of questions being asked of parents as to what would make them feel safe when they return to sports. So we looked at the 12 that were kind of compiled in many of those reopening plans, and we asked our own questions of what would make you feel safe once you return to our facility or once you return to playing in events. And it was questions related to event staff wearing masks and or dugouts being available. And we went to the point even to ask a question of, would you respond to a questionnaire or subject yourself to temperature checks when you return to the campus?
Okay, and David, I understand you're still going through the results with a fine-tooth comb, but can you give us sort of a high-level picture, your first impression of what respondents are saying, which, interestingly, 91% of the respondents were parents. So tell us what you're seeing in these early results.
Yeah, so some of the biggies that are just fundamentally important and really classify as things that, the more of this that people see, the more safe they feel, would be visible and increased sanitization practices by the venues. And then that includes like lobbies, common areas, high touch areas, but then also on the event operator side of things and the league side, the sanitization practices of playing areas and equipment. So both of those things were kind of ranked 1 and 2 in terms of those being things that the more people see, the more comfortable they feel. And then not too far behind that was seeing others engage in social distancing practices. And then on a related note, also scoring very highly was treating event staff who are trying to enforce those social distancing policies with respect.
Okay, very good. And I thought it was interesting. They were strongly against no spectators being allowed. So, William, let's go back to you and talk just a bit about the business side of things. 2 big issues here. One, this is costing facilities a lot of money to make these changes, but also consumer confidence, so to speak, where you have to keep your customer happy. So, can you share your thoughts with us on those 2 points?
Yeah, absolutely. This obviously there'll be significant costs associated with these enhancements as we continue to evaluate exactly what we do. For some facilities, it may not be as much. We're a 400-acre campus with a multitude of fields, so therefore it just amplifies that from our standpoint. We've already put ourselves in a position where we've cut a lot of our projections, but to your point, this is going to be time for us because this is going to instill confidence in our consumer that we provided a safe environment for them to come back and play. So these will definitely rise to the top from our standpoint of improvements that we still need to make here on campus. And we'll look at those not only for this year, but for the years to come.
Okay, and David, we talked a little bit about this off camera about how these results are so important from huge venues like Grand Park all the way down to small town little leagues all throughout the small cities and areas in Indiana. So how do you get these results out there far and wide so that everyone can see them and make these decisions about what to do?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to work with our PR team here at Indiana University, and also in conjunction with William's team up there with the city of Westfield. And hopefully, if the indication of the number of respondents that we've got at over 10,000 is anything, hopefully we're getting this out into the hands of event and facility operators that we're really here trying to provide this as a service so that those folks really understand how parents are going to respond and how they feel about these different adaptations before they arrive.
And David, we don't want to get too far into the weeds here, but you also just mentioned just minutes ago that you kind of teased out some more data with rec parents versus people involved in travel leagues, travel parents. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, the recreational parents, we could say, so ones that are not engaging in elite or travel competition, they see all 12 of the adaptations as much more important and much more fundamental to the experience, and they want to see those on a much larger scale in order to feel safe, whereas the travel parents had a different profile, so to speak, and they were much more willing to more quickly try to get things back to normal, so to speak. So it wasn't that they don't think that those adaptations should occur, they're just not quite as strong in their belief before they would feel safe engaging in that activity.
Okay, and William, just a few seconds left, sort of closing thoughts. Practices are underway there at Grand Park, so kind of a soft launch of some of these adaptations. What are you seeing on the fields there right now? How are people responding?
Yeah, we started back practices late last week, and next week we'll add a few more. And people are being very cautious. They understand that, we're going to roll this out slow as we get to the point where we can get back to tournaments. But it's good to have activity back on the campus. I think the kids are enjoying it, but everybody's been a little cautious, staying away from each other. A lot of our main areas on campus are still closed, so we'll evaluate those as we go through the process.
Okay, well, David and William, thank you for being on the show today. Full results are coming within a few days, so we'll certainly be following up and sharing those results as they become available. Thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kylie.
And Gary, back to you.
All right, Kylie, thanks. Some interesting data indeed. Thanks very much. Well, if all goes as planned, the state enters stage 4 of the Back on Track plan June 14. Indiana's 13 commercial casinos, they can reopen. The Indiana Gaming Commission issued standards to the gaming facilities, allowing for 50% capacity and adhering to social distancing guidelines. Customers will be required to remain 6 feet apart. Table games limited to 3 players, and some electronic games actually may be shut down. The casinos will also be required to institute strict cleaning policies, including disinfecting dice for each new shooter and cleaning chips at least every 2 hours. Well, up next, another coup for central Indiana. A Canada-based biopharmaceutical company will establish its very first U.S. manufacturing facility in Indianapolis. It's a big investment that will bring dozens of jobs. We'll hear from Point BioPharma's CEO about how FedEx factored heavily into that decision. Well, good news for Indiana's life sciences sector. Canada-based Point BioPharma has chosen Indianapolis over Charlotte and St. Louis to establish its first manufacturing facility in the U.S. It's a $25 million investment expected to create more than 100 jobs. Point Chief Executive Officer Dr. Joe McCann is with us now to explain what attracted his company to central Indiana. Joe, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you very much for having me, Gary.
Point BioPharma, interesting company, really focused on radiopharmaceuticals. In layman's terms, if you could talk about radiopharmaceuticals and what the company is all about.
Sure, definitely. So Point BioPharma, pharmaceutical company focused on creating better cancer treatments. And we see radiopharmaceuticals or radioligands as being this way of improving cancer treatment for patients. And when you think of radiopharmaceuticals or these radioligands, it's like a heat-seeking missile that carries a radioactive payload. These molecules go out and seek cancer cells, bind to them, deliver this radioactive payload, and kill the tumors. They're a very effective and safe form of treatment that have been used for over 30 years now in the clinic. And really the bottleneck for these getting into the mainstream has been manufacturing. And we've solved that problem now by locating at our facility in Indianapolis.
Yeah, and I want to talk about the reasons you chose Indianapolis, but I'm fascinated by, as we were talking off camera, is it about a 12-hour manufacturing process? In other words, from manufacturing to the time you want to get them out to the door, a very quick process?
Yes, it's a very rapid process, and you manufacture these multiple times a week. So these drugs have shelf lives of 5 days, unlike standard pharmaceuticals that are good on the shelf for 5 years. So we need to make these every week, multiple times a week. We need very highly skilled staff to do this, that can do this repeatably and to specifications. So they'll be manufactured over a 12-hour period, hit the road in the evening, head down to the FedEx hub, and then they'll be shipped all across the U.S. and really all across the world to treat patients with cancer.
Because of that, for lack of a better term, just-in-time model, if you will, the FedEx hub here, the massive second largest FedEx hub in the country, in the world really, a big factor in your decision to choose Indianapolis for this manufacturing operation.
Yeah, and major decisions. So that hazmat hub, which is expanding as well, will be the game changer for us. And when we formed the company, a big part of what's held this industry back is that manufacturing as well, that supply chain, to ensure that you have that logistics to get it out to the patients the next day without fail. FedEx has that reputation, and we're excited to be just down the road from them.
I want to ask you, too, about the company, the success. It's been rapid growth of the company. The company is very new. Talk about launching the company and what the reasons are, in your view, behind your early success.
Yeah, so the company was formed in January, and we brought the right team together that had a lot of focus on meeting our goals, our phase 3 or our last stage before FDA approval. So we put a laser focus on that. We hired in the U.S. Todd Hockemeyer, who's from Indianapolis, is leading our U.S. manufacturing operation. That was key in identifying the site, getting set up, identifying the local crews that will actually help us build out the facility. They're a very specialized skill set in Indianapolis that have the understanding in this type of manufacturing that are going to allow us to act quite quickly. And our motivation really behind why we did this is because these drugs are just so effective, as I mentioned before. And they've been so limited by the fact that nobody's really invested in this way in manufacturing. We felt is our duty, given the skill set that we have as a team, to act as quickly as possible to be able to bring these options to patients as quickly as we can.
And Joe, a final question I want to ask you about the Indiana Life Sciences vibe, if you will. CROSSROADS, the state's life sciences initiative, a lot of momentum in the life sciences sector. How important is that to your wanting to be here in Indianapolis?
Very important. A very, very close second to the FedEx hub. We need those types of skill sets. As I said earlier, this is just-in-time manufacturing, and to be able to draw from that sector and recruit these staff into our facility will allow us to meet our goals and to achieve our objectives of getting products into the market in 2023.
All right, and should mention the company hiring more than 100 workers by the end of 2024. That process is just now beginning. Dr. Joe McCann is the CEO at Point BioPharma. Joe, thanks for joining us from your home not far from Toronto, and we look forward to seeing you once you arrive in Indianapolis.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
All right. Well, the Wabash College Board of Trustees has elected Scott Feller to serve as that school's 17th president. Feller has served as dean of the college at Wabash since 2014 and as a professor of chemistry since 1998. He was unanimously elected during the trustees' May 16 meeting. He replaces Greg Hess, who announced his resignation in March after serving as Wabash president since 2013. Well, the Indy Chamber and Indiana University Kelley School of Business have launched a free multi-part webinar to help business owners reopen and recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. Instructors from Kelley will provide insight and strategies to rebuild businesses as they begin to reopen. The webinars are part of the Chamber's Rapid Recovery Hub, which offers a host of initiatives to help business owners. The series is free, open to the public, but there is a 500-person cap on the number of registrants per episode. Topics include managing staff, marketing, and coping with supply chain risks in that post-pandemic world. Adam Burtner is the manager of policy and political affairs for the Indy Chamber. He says topics have been based on questions from businesses that have been received over the last 2 months.
Kind of giving folks some clarity on how they can reopen and be successful post-COVID-19. Obviously, we're going to be dealing with this for a really long time, but we've just heard a lot of them say, we don't even know if we should open yet. Even for our bid, we don't know if customers will come back. So we'll hire back our employees, but we don't know if we're going to have the clientele or the customers to even sustain the folks we're hiring back. And so a lot of those questions are swirling. There's I think a lot of optimism, but a lot of cautious optimism, and that's what we hope we give. A lot people pay a lot of money to go to get their MBA and learn from the best and brightest of the Kelley School, and so we're hoping this gives everybody access to some of that information, and on the whole helps our entire city bounce back.
Each of the sessions will be about 45 minutes in length, followed by some Q&A. And recordings of those sessions will be made available on the Indy Chamber's site, held each Tuesday and Thursday through June 18, and will be taught by Kelley faculty in Indianapolis and Bloomington. Up next, we catch up with a well-known former Simon executive who went from the boardroom to the fairway. Lawrence native Steve Sterrett, he found his labor of love in retirement right in his own backyards where he grew up. We'll show you how he's revolutionizing Old Oakland Golf Club when we come back. Well, in a more than 2.5-decade career at Simon Property Group and predecessor of Melvin Simon and Associates, Steve Sterrett was involved in some big real estate deals for what became the world's largest mall operator. Sterrett retired as Simon's CFO in 2015 and soon found out he had at least one more real estate deal to put together. I sat down with the Lawrence native and IU grad at Old Oakland Golf Club, where he's overseeing a makeover that is near and dear to his heart. Steve, 30-year career at Simon, retired in 2014 as chief financial officer, great business career. A lot of people retire to golf, but not a lot of people retire and buy a golf course. Was this part of that retirement plan you had envisioned?
It was not part of the retirement plan at all, Gary. I always told people when I was thinking about retirement that work, when you boil it down to its kind of most simple ingredients, is forced social interaction and forced mental stimulation. And you can't go from doing 60 hours of a week, to zero. So I had other things that I was going to do. I'm on board of a couple of public companies, doing some philanthropy on some not-for-profit stuff. But the opportunity to buy the club presented itself about a year after I retired. As you know, I live on the golf course. I've been a member for 30 years. Lived in Lawrence Township since I was 6 months old, and I saw a lot of potential. The course has good bones. I thought about it in the way I would have thought about an acquisition in the mall business. There's no other private club within 7 miles of here. If you look at demographics, 3-mile trade area, there's 45,000 people. About 9% of golfers or Americans self-identify as golfers, so there's 4,000 golfers living within 3 miles of here. This is a perfect opportunity to provide a spot, to service, in essence, the northeast side of Indianapolis or the south side of the lake. So it's turned into a bit of a labor of love, but it's been fun.
Business decision, you talk about the business model, if you will, but passion, I think, is a part of it too on a couple of levels. One, you're a passionate golfer. Talk about your love of the game of golf, because you golf all over the world.
I am. I was a 3-sport athlete back in the day in Lawrence Central when short, slow guys could still play high-level varsity sports. But it became pretty apparent in my early 20s that I was not going to play industrial league basketball forever or play slow-pitch softball. So I started looking for something to do competitively. And I always had good hand-eye coordination. I had actually taken a PE class when I was at IU back in the day on golf. And so I remember buying the Jack Nicklaus Golf My Way tape and started kind of futzing around with learning how to play golf and got hooked pretty quick. So really beginning in maybe by the time I was about 30, I started playing tournament golf. I'm actually the president of the Indiana Golf Association this year, so I still play tournament golf. And it's taken me all over the world, played some great courses, met some wonderful people. So that part's been very fun.
And you're very passionate too about Lawrence Township. You grew up here, you mentioned your athletic career at Lawrence Central High School. You met your wife there. Talk about that passion and what Lawrence Township, what this area of Indianapolis means to you.
Well, you know, it's funny, when I graduated from IU, I was an accountant, spent the first 10 years of my career in public accounting. I remember being 26 years old and writing some goals down on a piece of paper, and one of them, interestingly enough, was to be the CFO of a Fortune 500 company. Always thought that I would have to leave Indianapolis to do that, and happily with the growth that Simon had after the IPO, I was able to make a full career out of Simon, accomplish some goals, and never have to leave town, which was very cool. But I coached youth basketball in Lawrence. I was on the board of the school township foundation for a long time. Our kids went through Lawrence Township schools together. So it's home. And the fact that I can do this as now a small business owner, but in a small part give back to the community and really build something, create something to be proud of, and do it in my hometown, it's pretty special. Not a lot of people get to do that.
Well, I think it's important to note, you've not only purchased the course, but you're investing in a large way into the course in some substantial improvements. Talk about the improvements, what you're trying to create. You've already created, but we'll create here at Old Oakland.
Yeah, I'm over budget, if that counts at all. Well, I mentioned earlier, when I bought the course, I did so because I thought it had really good bones. It was a good golf course, but it needed to be modernized. And so we spent the first 3 years redoing the golf course, all new bunkers, all new cart paths, all new sprinkler system, put in some new tees to make it either harder or easier depending upon what level of golfer you were, put in a new short game practice area. And then the last element, which we're in the midst of doing right now, is we're about doubling the size of the clubhouse. New fitness area, all new life fitness equipment, Peloton bike, a 2-bay indoor hitting area with TrackMan simulators, expanding the restaurant area, creating a private dining room area. So when it's all said and done, we'll have created something that looks very different than it was when I bought it.
The game of golf, the business of golf, has gone through some challenging years in recent years, but you're obviously bullish on the golf course business.
It's interesting, and I think part of what we've gone through as a nation here the last couple of months has made people appreciate things that all of a sudden they couldn't do for a while, and whether that's go to a restaurant or go out and play golf. The number of golfers in the United States has stayed relatively steady, over the last 10 or 20 years. The number of courses has come down. And so, we're busy. And so it's not for lack of demand. And then I think the other thing is an entity like Topgolf has introduced tons of people to the game, and they find out, hey, it's really fun. And over time, as an industry, we'll convert some of those social golfers to people who want to belong to a club or play, real golf on a regular basis.
Former Simon CFO Steve Sterrett, and in full disclosure, I am a member at the club. My wife and I live there, and I can attest firsthand that Steve and his wife Betty are doing a really great job transforming Old Oakland into something very special. Now here's a look at what's making news now around Indiana. The developers of the $440 million Electric Works Mixed-Use Innovation District in downtown Fort Wayne have received a key approval. RTM Ventures says the National Park Service has okayed the redevelopment for the project's West Campus at the former GE site. RTM Ventures says the project can now utilize federal historic preservation tax incentives to finance the $250 million first phase. Fishers-based Rebar Development is planning a more than $17 million mixed-use project in downtown Lafayette. The company says construction on the Ellsworth is expected to begin this fall. The city says the project will feature nearly 100 loft apartments and 2,000 square feet of commercial space. And Manchester University says it is offering 4 years of tuition-free education exclusively to incoming undergraduates. The university says students from families that make $65,000 or less per year will be eligible for the optional assistance. The university also says students must live in on-campus housing each year and pay fees, including room and board, in order to qualify. And I'll be right back after this. Stay with us. Coming up next week, Purdue researchers have created software that allows apps to take up less space and download faster on smartphones. As we go inside innovation, you will learn how App Streamer works. Well, thanks for joining us this week. I'm Gary Dick. Go out and make it a successful week.
Inside Indiana Business with Gary Dick is a production of Grow Indiana Media Ventures, with support from WFYI Productions.